What does it take to get banned from the UFC? Not just a suspension or a fine, but completely erased from the promotion. Under Dana White's watch, the answer is simple. Cross the line and there's no coming back. Over the years, several fighters have found themselves on the wrong side of UFC's zero-tolerance policy. Some lost their tempers after a tough fight, while others found themselves tangled in legal troubles. Then there are the bans that still have fans scratching their heads, questioning what went wrong. These are the career-ending moments that shook the sport. Let's dive into the stories behind these fighters' fall from grace and how their actions forever changed the UFC landscape. Don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories and updates from the world of UFC. The notorious case of Paul Daley. May 8, 2010. Paul Daley threw away his UFC career with one reckless punch. After being dominated by Josh Koscheck at UFC 113, Daley let his frustration explode. As the fight ended, he walked over like he wanted to touch gloves, and then sucker punched Koscheck after the bell. The MMA world was stunned.
Daley punches Koscheck at the end of the fight, and look at Dan Merkley.
Dana White didn't hold back. I don't care if he's the best 170-pounder in the world. He'll never fight in the UFC again. And he meant it.
I don't give a shit if he's the best 170-pounder in the world. He'll never come back here again.
We're talking Paul Daley.
Yeah.
You're cutting him from the UFC.
Yeah. He'll never come back.
Daley was immediately banned, and even though he went on to have a strong career in Bellator and Strikeforce, the UFC never opened its doors again. His case was more than just a punishment. It became a message. Post-fight cheap shots would never be tolerated again. One punch, and he was gone forever. Rousimar Palhares. Palhares had world-class jiu-jitsu, but zero control. He wasn't banned for losing. He was banned for not letting go. At UFC 111, he caught Tomasz Druwal in a brutal knee bar and held on way too long, even after the tap. He got suspended.
Mistake. Huge mistake. And look out for the legs. The leg locks. He's got it. Tap, 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 tap.
But then, at UFC Fight Night 29, he did it again, this time with a heel hook on Mike Pierce. Pierce tapped, the ref stepped in, and Palhares still didn't release.
The legs, the leg locks. He's got it. Tap, 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 tap.
Dana White had enough. The message was clear. You don't hurt people after they surrender.
Somebody after the fight was over. The fight was over and, everybody's in the corner waiting for the decision. He went over and hit the guy. We cut him. He'll never fight in the UFC ever again. And this is the second incident we've had with Palhares where he had the lock and he didn't let it go. Finally, he let it go, but I'm going to cut him too.
Palhares was immediately cut and permanently banned from the UFC. And while he did fight elsewhere, his name still brings one reaction. He just wouldn't let go. War Machine. War Machine, real name Jonathan Koppenhaver, had problems way bigger than fighting. He was cut from the UFC in 2008 after refusing a bout and making shockingly insensitive comments about Evan Tanner's death. But what followed was far darker. In 2014, he brutally assaulted his ex-girlfriend, adult film actress Christy Mack, leaving her with fractured bones and severe injuries. The attack made headlines far beyond MMA. He was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole until 2033. War Machine isn't just banned from the UFC. He's locked away, likely forever. He went from fighting in the cage to being locked in one. A career and a life completely destroyed. Jason High. Jason High didn't commit a crime, but one bad decision ended everything. At UFC Fight Night 42, after losing by TKO to Rafael dos Anjos, High felt the stoppage came too early. In a flash of emotion, he shoved the referee. That's all it took. The UFC didn't wait. Dana White cut him almost instantly. In a sport built on controlled violence, touching an official is strictly off limits, and High crossed the line. No big press release, no second chances, just gone. Since then, he's fought in other promotions like PFL and AFC, but the UFC door remains firmly shut. It wasn't the loss that ruined his career. It was that one split-second push. Sometimes the fight doesn't end with punches. It ends with a shove. Caleb Starnes. Caleb Starnes didn't just lose a fight at UFC 83. He ran his way out of the UFC, literally. Against Nate Quarry, Starnes spent 3 rounds avoiding the fight, circling the cage non-stop while landing next to nothing. The crowd booed, commentators were stunned, and Dana White was furious. After the fight, Dana said he just doesn't belong in the UFC. He should consider a new line of work. That was it, lifetime ban. Starnes became known as the Running Man and bounced around smaller promotions until 2016. But in the UFC, he was done. No suspension, no second chance. One of the only fighters in history to be cut simply for refusing to fight. And if you watch that bout back, you'll understand exactly why. Randy Couture. Randy Couture wasn't banned for violence or drama. He was banned for business. After retiring, Couture signed with Spike TV, the home of Bellator, UFC's biggest rival. Dana White didn't take it lightly. He called it betrayal. And when Couture tried to corner his son, Ryan Couture, in a UFC fight, Dana shut it down hard. He can't even buy a ticket to a UFC event, Dana said.
And I'm happy to not be in business with him anymore. Now I don't ever have to be in business with him ever.
Imagine that. One of the UFC's greatest champions banned from the building. Randy didn't back down though. He doubled down, coaching on Spike's Fight Master and staying deep in the MMA scene outside the UFC. It's rare to see a legend banned not for what he did in the cage, but what he did after it. But with Dana, loyalty is everything, and Couture crossed the line. Thiago Silva. In 2014, Thiago Silva crossed a line that the UFC couldn't ignore. He showed up armed at a jiu-jitsu school, threatening his ex-wife and her new partner, Pablo Popovich. A SWAT team surrounded Silva's house. He was arrested. Dana White immediately cut him. He will never fight in the UFC again. But months later, the charges were dropped due to shaky evidence, and Silva got reinstated, briefly. Then new footage surfaced, showing a previous assault. That was the final nail. Silva was banned again, this time for good. From a light heavyweight contender to a fighter with a permanent stain on his name. The UFC has dealt with wild stories, but when a fighter makes headlines involving SWAT teams and death threats, there's no coming back. Not even when the legal system lets you walk. Cody East. Cody East's UFC journey was controversial from the start. Before he ever stepped inside the octagon, he had a criminal history, domestic violence, child abuse, and assault charges going back to 2006. Despite all that, the UFC still gave him a shot in 2016, hoping talent could outweigh his past. But that decision didn't age well. Not long after signing, more legal trouble surfaced. Although the exact details of his 2016 case weren't publicly laid out, it was serious enough for the UFC to cut ties for good. They didn't wait around for a redemption arc. Since then, East has pretty much vanished from the spotlight. No big fights, no major comeback stories, just another name on the list of fighters who blew their shot. In a sport where second chances are rare, Cody East burned his before the first round even ended. Ruslan Magomedov. Ruslan Magomedov wasn't kicked out for anything criminal, but for the UFC, doping is just as bad. His problems started with multiple failed drug tests under USADA, including one in 2018 that revealed steroids and PEDs. But it didn't end there. In February 2019, when he refused to take another required test, that was it. UFC handed him a lifetime ban, no second chances. That's how serious they are about drug violations. Instead of fighting the suspension, Magomedov moved on and signed with ACA in Russia, where he still competes. But in the UFC's eyes, he's untouchable. Even if he racks up wins elsewhere, there's no way back. Doping once is risky. Doing it 3 times and refusing to test, that's career suicide. His case was one of the clearest messages USADA and the UFC ever sent. If you cheat and hide, you're out forever. So there you have it. Some of the most shocking, career-ending bans in UFC history. Whether it was one illegal punch, one reckless decision, or one rule too many broken, these fighters learned the hard way. The UFC doesn't play. Dana White draws a line, and once you cross it, you're done. No second chances, no special treatment. It doesn't matter how famous you are. The UFC will always protect its brand over any individual fighter, every single time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into MMA's darker side, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got more untold stories, wild moments, and brutal truths coming soon. Drop a comment below. Do you think some of these bans went too far, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp, fight smart, and respect the code.